Welcome to the Chicago Sun-Times Election Night live stream. I'm Lynn Sweet, live from the Sun-Times West Loop headquarters. Thank you so much for joining us on this live stream tonight. You've come to the right place for lively analysis, up-to-the-minute vote returns, and we're going to be telling you tonight about the big races up and down the ballot. It may be a long night, so stay tuned, buckle up. We have a fantastic lineup of guests in addition to our own seasoned stable of reporters who will be with us. So we're going to try and give you meaning to the vote results tonight. So sit tight, and we're going to be live all evening until the major races are called. We won't let you miss a thing. Our election partner and sponsor of this live stream is AARP Illinois, whose survey revealed that the Illinois fiscal crisis should be the very top priority of all the candidates. Welcome to all of you who are watching on our website and on Facebook. So no matter what platform you're on, I hope you follow this conversation. If you have something to say it on Twitter. Our hashtag is hashtag SunTimesLive. So we have a little bit of news of the day, but it really comes out on Election Day. The thing to watch is this big turnout at the polls. We know we had a big early vote. We just don't know if it's going to translate to having more than the 3.6 million votes that were cast 4 years ago in the governor's race. Anyway, we have a big evening ahead, so let me start out with a guest who knows everything that's going on, whose own future is at stake. Joining me now is Lieutenant Governor Evelyn Sanguinetti and our ace Sun-Times political reporter, Tina Spondelis. Now, Tina's been covering this race from day one. So, Tina, what do you want to know from the Lieutenant Governor today?
I want to know a little bit about, you've been on the campaign bus for a week or two. Where
Correct.
were you going? What is your final message to voters?
Well, we actually just finished our tour throughout the entire state of Illinois on the bus, and it's been wonderful because, you know, we have many counties in Illinois, and not any county is created equally. We're all very diverse. So going to Southern Illinois, their concerns are very different than the concerns that we have here in the Chicagoland region. But always the reception has been very positive, that Bruce Rauner's been the only one to stand up to Mike Madigan, and that we need another term to continue what we've been doing since we got started 4 years ago.
And Evelyn speaks Spanish, and so she's a Latina lieutenant governor, which is pretty rare. Do you think that there could have been maybe more outreach to the Hispanic community in terms of more ads or trying to get the vote out in the Hispanic community, or do you think that they did that well?
Yeah, I believe our administration has done it very well. And yes, I'm the first Latina lieutenant governor in the whole country. So I've loved touring the state, and I've loved to speak with people that cannot yet vote for me and go into grade schools, go into high schools, junior high schools, to let everyone know that the American dream is still very much alive. And I let people know that education is what saved me. It was my equalizer in life. And I'm proud to say that Bruce Rauner has brought forth the education funding formula that's equitable to all children in all 102 counties. So I've loved to get my Latina message out, and hopefully I've inspired a few Latina females to get out there and run for whatever their heart desires.
Well, that's the point. When we talk about women running, you know, you can't win if you don't run. And again, as I say, we don't know your future tonight. The polls in Illinois are still open another 52 minutes, and everyone knows that it seems like you're in an uphill battle to get a second term. When you look back at this campaign, what might be a turning point or two?
Well, you know, we were in an uphill battle 4 years ago, and we were behind in the polls 4 years ago. But we were sworn into power shortly thereafter because we had the winning message. Simply put, people in Illinois are really tired of Mike Madigan. You know, Mike's been around since he was sworn in actually when I was just 3 months of age. And so that's given him a lot of time to amass himself
so young,
with a lot.
that seems,
Oh, clearly layers of makeup.
Right.
But yes,
Yeah.
so really, people wanted to see a change in Illinois.
Yeah.
They saw that change with us. And yes, we're behind in the polls now, but we were behind before. We're the ones with the winning message.
So where do you think most of the Republican vote for your ticket's going to come from? Do you have counties that you already know, if you've been looking at some turnout numbers, where you think the Rauner surge is going to be?
Well, we believe the Rauner surge is going to be throughout the entire state of Illinois, because when we were first sworn in, we heard it loud and clear from people south of I-80 that they did not feel heard, they did not feel represented. I chair the Governor's Rural Affairs Council, and we've been able to do a lot with all communities in Illinois. So I can't say that there's precisely one community that I believe will come out stronger than the other one. A ton of people are getting out. As you were mentioning before, thousands of people have been doing early voting. And today, when I went to vote with my daughter, who's now 18, a lot of people very excited about it. You know, my mom came from Fidel Castro's Cuba. Oftentimes she would tell me about freedom not being free, and the fact that we really need to let our voices be heard.
So by the way, since you do bring up immigration, that is one of the issues that President Trump has, in a sense, used to try and whip up the Republican base vote. So was your mother a refugee, or?
My mother was a Cuban refugee, and my father an Ecuadorian immigrant. And yeah, they met. I came shortly thereafter.
Okay,
Mom was 15.
so in the end, okay, President Trump has ended up this campaign with a divisive rhetoric, demonizing immigrants, the caravan of people walking through Mexico that won't get here forever, you know, in months. Do you think that created a problem for your campaign to get the message out, because you still had to balance, you're not running from Trump, you didn't want to run too far from Trump, not you personally, but especially Rauner. You know, sometimes he was distant, sometimes he was closer, shows up at the rally. Was this just a curveball that you guys didn't know how to deal with?
No, absolutely not, because Trump's not on the ballot here in Illinois, and we're facing a lot of problems in the state of Illinois. And people know that, and they know we're the ones that have the winning message. But it goes without saying that we do need comprehensive immigration reform. We've needed it for decades. And so when people go out and vote today, you need to think about what candidates are more responsive to your needs as a family. And I would tell people to please compare Bruce Rauner up against J.B. Pritzker. J.B. Pritzker wants to raise our taxes with the graduated income tax hike. Motor vehicle mileage tax is huge in our rural communities, where it takes many miles to get to hospitals and to their schools and so on. J.B. Pritzker has been anointed by Madigan, where you know, the governor has stood up to Mike Madigan.
I have covered other elections, maybe where Madigan's demonized, and Republicans have put so much faith in that. And I had your campaign manager, Betsy Anthony. Betsy, if you're watching, my apologies, Anthony. And I asked her the same thing about putting so much of your strategy into people caring more about Michael Madigan's fate than Donald Trump's fate. When you look back at it, do you think you might have emphasized the Madigan factor too much? As worthy as you think it might be as a subject to discuss.
Yeah, well, Madigan is in Illinois. Madigan has been Illinois' problem for decades.
Right.
So putting an emphasis on Illinois when you're running for governor and lieutenant governor is really where the emphasis needs to be. Now, I know J.B. Pritzker and Mike Madigan have tried to put the emphasis in the federal government, but really this is a statewide election.
That's a point. We've seen so many ads in this cycle. What's the ad that you think was most effective for the Rauner-Sanguinetti ticket?
Now, you know, that's an unfair question, because I was only in one commercial.
Oh,
so
of
course,
so
know,
Tina,
very fast.
we have to stop the presses, stop the platforms. If only the lieutenant governor had been more ads, then Rauner would have been ahead. But seriously,
perhaps, but no.
What
I
do you
think that ad was my favorite ad.
Which ad? The
one where we went fast forward to talk about our accomplishments.
So
really
the one
quick.
besides the one with you in it, of the other ads. I mean, I know there was the one that got a lot of flack with that
the wedding
clergyman
scene
doing the wedding thing. Would that rank up there as your most effective ad?
Well, I think all of our ads have been effective, and it's really talked about the main problems in Illinois. The fact that the people that are running for governor, mainly J.B. Pritzker and his lieutenant governor pick, along with Mike Madigan, they believe that solving problems is by raising our taxes. And we're still trying to come up for air from Mike Madigan's 32% income tax increase. And now they're talking about raising taxes even more.
So Tina, what do you think when you cover the lieutenant governor and Rauner, what do you think was the turning point that maybe I couldn't tease out of the lieutenant governor here.
Well, I think that there were some divides within the GOP party in the states that we're seeing in the past couple of years. The HB 40 votes, some immigration,
Oh, that's
the March
interesting.
primary.
Turning point. Thank you. I should have.
There have been some points
And
of
tell
division.
our viewers what the HB 40 vote was.
It was a measure that expanded taxpayer funding of abortions that the governor signed last year. At first, he said he wasn't sure what he was going to do. It was maybe a mandatory veto, and then he came and
Okay, and that
vetoed
led
it.
to the rise of the Jeannie
Jeannie
Ives candidacy. Jeannie Ives will be with us later tonight as a guest, by the way, along with many others, including Cook County Board President and mayoral candidate Tony Preckwinkle, who will be on next. Okay, when I think of turning points, do you think that the way you handled that HB 40 factor kind of set a course in motion for your administration?
No, because as Republicans, we're a family. It's a big tent.
Yeah.
And we don't all think equally. You know, there are more moderate Republicans. There are Republicans that are farther to the right. But at the end of the day, after the primary was over, we all came together as one big family, despite the fact that we had some internal disagreements. I'll have you know that I'm pro-life. My mother chose to have me and keep me when she was 15 years of
Wow.
age. So, of course, I'm going to be pro-life because of my mom's choice. And this is an
15
area where I disagreed with Bruce Rauner. But at the end of the day, we have so many issues facing the state of Illinois. I turn to my family and thinking about how I'm going to be able to make sure that my kids choose Illinois as the place to have their families and grow their families, many other issues. And this is what Republicans ultimately are thinking about now as a family. We're a big tent.
What do you think of the Sam McCann candidacy? Oh, hold on. Before you say, could you explain to our viewers?
Sam McCann?
Yeah.
He's a third-party candidate from the Conservative Party, which doesn't really exist. He's branded a new party, and people see him as a spoiler because he's being funded by a Democratic-led union who also endorsed J.B. Pritzker. So
Right,
the
and
governor
as we
himself at
see,
debates has
there
said
actually are
that
4
he's the spoiler.
men running for the Senate. We have the Libertarian candidate, candidate Jackson, as well as Sam McCann. So I know we put a lot of focus on Pritzker and Rauner. So what's your analysis of the McCann factor in this race?
Well, sadly, McCann is a spoiler. You know, he's taking money from the unions, the same union that's backing J.B. Pritzker, and people are seeing right through that as well. He's had some financing problems within his own personal business, lied about his military record, incredibly flawed candidate, and really he's disrupting this process right now because he was never a real conservative, a real Republican. He's now a spoiler, and people are seeing through that.
So what kind of vote do you think he's going to get? Or what, do you have any like sensors, early detection system to have a sense of what he's going to get out there?
Well, at one time, I've seen a few commercials where he pretends to be some sort of Trumpican. There are other times where he pretends to be the pro-life candidate, which is clearly not the case. Pro-life organizations have rescinded their endorsement of him and so on. So really, this gentleman is a sham candidate. He was placed in there to be the person to take away votes from our governor, and people are looking beyond that because he is a sham candidate.
So in our last bit of question, unless you have a burning one, I just want to know if you could give me a short answer, because we have waiting to come on soon Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle. What is your just favorite moment from the campaign? And I know this might sound a little bit softball, everybody, but these candidates live through a lot of grueling days, long days. It's not easy to be a candidate. Okay, we just sit here every day trying to pick at you. So is there something that you take away that was either for you just in this campaign, not the first one, that was special?
Yeah, there is one that I remember every day. So education saved my life. I failed the first grade because I didn't know English and so on, and I signed on because Bruce Rauner is the education governor. And then finally, as lieutenant governor, I was able to initiate a pilot program so that 10 rural high schools could have access to advanced placement courses where they get college credits for free. And we did that in Pope County. And there was a little girl that came up there, and well, she's an adolescent, and she gave her testimony, and she felt that, wow, for the longest time here in rural Illinois, we felt so forgotten. We felt that somehow the rest of Illinois was mad at us, and having this educational opportunity is quite the game changer for us in rural Illinois. And that stuck with me.
Okay, that's
just
the
knowing,
special moment.
Yes.
Well, anyway, everybody, the polls are going to close in about 40 minutes. Lieutenant Governor, I don't know your fate, but whatever it is, I appreciate your service. I appreciate your coming on to our show tonight. And this is a very weird time, right? Because you just don't know.
Well, thank you for letting me be here. And you know what? Let's get together again and talk about my other functions as Lieutenant Governor, because a lot of people don't know.
Well, I'll leave that because, as everyone knows, I'm the Washington Bureau Chief, so I might not be here, but that will be the Tina Fondella's show with her first guest then, the Lieutenant Governor, or wherever fate brings us. And we're going to be talking now, there's a lot of election in the air, and as we switch out guests, which you may see people coming and going, so thank you.
Thank you.
Let me just remind everyone that tonight you could follow us on Twitter, you could follow us on Facebook. If you want to join the conversation, our hashtag is SunTimesLive. Right now we have just a little over 40 minutes until the polls close in Illinois. As I said earlier, we have lots of turnout. We don't know yet if this is going to translate into record turnout. Usually this is called a midterm election because it is midterm between the presidential elections, which bring out a lot of turnout. Now, joining me, and thank you for coming on the set, this is Cook County Board President Toni Preckwinkle. Toni, thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me, Lynn. I appreciate it.
Right, so where Lieutenant Governor Sanguetti has a real anxious night because she may be defeated, I want to just announce already what is safe is that you're going, Cook, I could say this, the polls aren't closed, but Toni's going to win her race for re-election to the Cook County Board, and the reason is there's no one running against her.
I'm unopposed.
Right, so an early mazel tov for your second term.
Thank you.
And also, since people who watch this, I hope, are our political junkie audience, everybody also knows that Toni is running for mayor of Chicago, and petitions have to be in on that race in just a few weeks with the election in February, with a runoff if needed in April. But I want to go over some of these Cook County races. You've got right now, out of the 17 board districts, only 4 are Republican, and 3 of them have pretty good challengers up there. Can you just tell us, there's 2 of them I want to focus on and that we're going to be watching in the night. The chairman of the Republican Party of Illinois, Tim Schneider, is running against Kevin Morrison up in the northwest suburbs.
That's right.
And that's a big one. And then Sean Morrison, who is the chairman of the Cook County Republican Party, is running against Abdel Nasser Rashid in the Lamont and Orland Park area. So what's your take on what you think is going to happen from what you hear?
Well, there are 4 Republican seats out of the 17, as you've heard. Scott Britton is running against Greg Goslin. We're fairly confident of that race. Kevin Morrison is running against Tim Schneider. He's a very young and energetic candidate, a member of the LGBT community. And Abdel Nasser Rashid is running against Sean Morrison, who's chair of the Cook County Party. And I think we've got a shot in each of those races. So.
Well, that's Republican territory. Also, there's a
but
little...
These are areas where Hillary Clinton won, though.
Right. But I just want our viewers to know there's a little bit of there's a little bit of taking on these Republican Party chairs. If you get rid of them, do you think you weaken the Republican Party too? Was that part of the thought in focusing resources on these races?
No, the idea was to have good candidates. And let me just say, one of the challenges we faced in this year is that in 2010, Pat Quinn won. He won with tremendous pluralities in Cook County.
Yeah.
In 2014, we had a plurality in Cook County, but not sufficient to carry him across the state.
Right.
And so in 2018, as chair of the Democratic Party and with generous support from J.B. Pritzker, we looked at those areas in the county where Pat had not done as well in 2014 as he did in 2010, and tried to, frankly, gin up Democratic turnout. And one of the ways to do that was to focus on county board races, which hadn't, frankly, gotten much attention in the past.
Okay, so there's a method to the madness here. It's not
Of
just
course.
stripping
No, it's a way to gin up Democratic turnout and interest up and down the ticket, and hopefully bring Democrats out in those parts of the county where we didn't win with sufficient plurality in 2014 to carry us.
So I want to just slow this down a little bit and explain to our viewers, this is politics 101. And that to win, for J.B. Pritzker to win, he's going to win Cook County and Chicago. It's Democratic rich territory. But what president and party boss, Tony Preckwinkle, is telling us.
Party leader, thank you so much.
Please. It's a compliment. Don't you think everyone, it's a compliment in Chicago to be called boss? Really? Come on.
I prefer party leader,
Okay.
or chair of the party.
So the point is, JB and the ticket, especially Kwame Raoul, who may be in a little bit of trouble with Erica Harold and AG, they just don't need to win the Democratic vote. They need a massive turnout, and one of the ways you do it is by ginning up interest in these other races. So
Down ballot races.
Down ballot races. So that also was a strategy,
Exactly.
as well as you're trying to maybe get some members on your county board who
We would have
think more
pursued the
like you.
strategy regardless of who the Republicans were.
Right. So see, this is Politics 101 for people listening. That's what you do to spur turnout. So I got my start, my first beat, as I think I might have told you years ago, was covering Cook County. And that led me to my path to politics here. I am wondering if you think that it's healthy, though, for the electorate. You're unopposed. Every major county official is unopposed. We could call it somewhere. Okay, so right now, the president, Tony Preckwinkle, unopposed. County clerk, Karen Yarborough, unopposed. Sheriff Tom Dart. It's like I'm giving you the results before the polls close. Unopposed. And Treasurer Maria Pappas. And the commissioners in District 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 12, and 16, they're reelected because they're unopposed. Is that healthy for our system?
Well, you'll have to talk to the Republicans about why they didn't field candidates against us. I mean, you shouldn't put the
We're having
the
a
onus
civics
on the
chat
Democrats to find Republicans to run against us.
on it. So I want to pivot to how, first of all, give me your prediction on what you think turnout's going to be, or do you have any info on, where it might be?
My faithful staff has reported
Good.
that
Thank
the last off-year election was 2014, okay? Voter registration in the county is up by about, I'm sorry, in the city is about up by 10%. In the city, early voting is up almost 100%, and mail voting is up almost 200%.
Wow.
So this is tremendous voter interest, and we may be in a position where we have more off-year turnout than any year in the last since 1986.
And usually one of the things that political professionals have to battle in midterms is the fall-off voter, the voters who always vote in presidentials but don't in these midterms. So,
And more often, frankly, those folks are Democrats who don't come to the polls.
so to what do you attribute this?
Well, President Trump has made the election about him. And if you're a person who is an immigrant or has immigrant parents, grandparents, whatever, I think you find his position profoundly disappointing. He's made enemies of, poor people from countries that have dealt with tremendous violence, the caravan that's coming from Mexico, into enemies of our country. You would think this is an army of millions that's about to invade us, and it's poor, terrified people fleeing violence and poverty in their own countries. And he's made that a big issue in the campaign. He's talked about birthright citizenship. This was an amendment to the Constitution that made slaves citizens. I'm personally offended by this. Not to mention anybody who was born in this country to immigrant parents.
So you're thinking it's all the Trump factor that has spurred it. What about the Me Too factor that might spur turnout?
Well, I think there are a lot of issues around the president, and frankly, Me Too is one of them. But I think particularly things like immigration and like birthright citizenship and some of the other divisive issues that he's taken on and promulgated have driven those who are dismayed and challenged by those positions that he's taken to the polls. And what I've heard, although I'm not predicting, is that particularly women and younger people find his positions offensive.
So we'll see. It's interesting that in other places in the country, it became the year of the women where you had an unusual number of women candidates. We did in our primary,
Right.
but we didn't have any unusual number of women. I want to pivot because I know people want me to ask you. The polls close in about a half hour. We'll know the results in a few hours, and then this being Chicago, we immediately move on. I mean, we're in the mayoral race already. What's your next move once you get this election done?
Well, first of all, as chairman of the party, I'm focused on today. We've got to be sure that everybody who has not voted goes to the polls. So
And
I'm
you've
encouraging.
got 29 minutes left.
So if you're in line when at 7 o'clock, you get to vote. So
A good,
you know.
good reminder.
Right. So
Yes.
it's not that you vote by 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
If you're in line to vote by 7 o'clock, you may vote. So anybody who has not yet gotten to the polls and thinks they're too late, it's not true. You have half an hour to get to the polls. That's the first thing. And then I think there'll be several days of kind of review and analysis of the election results, and we'll try to figure out what it means for us here in Illinois. And then I think you're right, it's on to the next election.
So what is it when you analyze just the returns from Chicago, and you might put your ward map overlay on it, give us a feel as to the political intelligence that you're going to be looking for as you analyze the Chicago voting returns as it relates to your run for mayor?
Well, we're going to look at turnout, of course. So it's not simply which wards or townships in the county JB and Juliana carried, but what they carried them by, what the turnout was. You have to look at where the really interested and involved voters are, and target your campaign to those folks.
Right. So your base, you have a geographic base, you have a gender base, you have a racial base. So that gives you things to look at in the city as to where you will maybe focus some efforts. Is that what you see? Or
Well,
how do you analyze it a different way?
No, I think that we're going to run a broad-based campaign, and I've always had broad-based support. We've had great support along the lakefront as well as in the African-American community. I've had significant support in other sectors of the county. So I'm going to run a broad campaign and try to appeal to everybody.
So I know the hurdle of just getting on the ballot is big. We have more than a dozen people running for mayor now. But with this 12,000 signature requirement, we had the city clerk on last night, Anna Valencia, who reminded people that you can only sign one mayoral petition. So there might be some wrangling over it. Do you have a sense of how many people may actually end up on the ballot?
I have no idea, but the general rule, as you're probably aware, is that you submit at least 3 times the number of signatures required.
And are you well on that road?
We're well on that road.
On it. And when do you have a sense that you may even start something like advertising in a mayoral race? Is that after you get on the ballot? How do you see the time frame develop in your race?
Well, I think in the mayoral race, it will probably be after the new year. The general rule, I think, is that people pay attention when it's a little closer to the election, and that's when you want to focus your advertising.
Which brings me, do you think everybody just has a little bit of election fatigue? Because if you watch TV, you can't watch without all these ads, all this. We're ending in a lot of these campaigns on a very negative note. Do you think, as a candidate running probably the easiest campaign you can with no one you're running against, but do you think there is a sense that everybody just needs a little time off from these elections and then we gin up the mayoral race? Or do you think that our civic will is strong enough to go just full-blown into the mayoral without a timeout?
Well, we're a couple weeks away from Thanksgiving and then the Christmas holidays, and so I think that during that period people are more focused on family and personal issues, and as I said, after the new year and closer to the February election, people will be more focused on that.
And what is the hardest job, by the way, when you are the chairman, the leader of the Cook County Party? What was the hardest part of it as you came into this election? Was it dealing with turnout? Was it intramural skirmishing? You succeeded Joe Barrios, who lost his bid for re-election as assessor. Was it bringing different factions together? What did you have to do to make that work?
Well, as I looked at the formation of the executive committee, I tried to be sure that we represented all segments of the party, both the city and the suburbs, that the demographic components of the party were well represented. The executive vice chair of the party is Mike Rodriguez from the 22nd Ward. So, I think, and we have members of the executive committee, Lou Lang and Zuccarelli, Frank Zuccarelli and Senator Don Harmon from the township. So we tried to put together a executive committee that reflected the diversity of the party to be the party's leaders.
So we're winding down. Again, the polls close in about 25 minutes. It seems to me, I wonder if you agree that the closest race tonight may well be for Attorney General. Is that your sense too?
Well, the polling that I've seen from the last couple weeks shows Senator Raul up, just a little bit above the margin of error. So I expect that he'll be victorious.
Okay, well, we have 2 more guests coming in. So Tony Preckwinkle, my first beat. This is where my heart started, my career started, covering Cook County government.
Well, thank you. I'm
So,
grateful for your interest.
Do you know I started it before your budget was even $1 billion?
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was, it was
It's now
kinda-
5.9, so.
Yes. So I had it till back in the day. Anyway, thanks for joining me.
Of course.
And we'll
Lynn,
see you
thank
on
you
the
so much
Mayoral
for inviting
Trail.
us.
Okay, so now as we switch out to our next guest, the polls close in about 21 minutes. As you know, the polls have already closed on the East Coast, so we're waiting for some big results there. You know, it's election night in America, and even though we're focusing on what's happening in Illinois, we know that a lot of things are at issue tonight, especially which party controls the House of Representatives, what party controls Congress. As soon as if we get some results in some of those big races, we'll know maybe soon, maybe not, if the Democrats can flip 23 Republican-held seats to take control of the House. 4 of those seats that are in play are in Illinois, and we'll be getting to them very soon. The Senate seems pretty safe to remain in Republican hands. It would really need an enormous, enormous blue wave if the Democrats were to take over the Senate. So in a moment, I'm going to bring on 2 election specialists on it, but I also just want to remind people that throughout the evening, we will bring you election results, analysis, and all our in-house guest experts. So joining me now are 2 people that know a lot about politics in Illinois. Thank you for coming. I have Jeannie Ives, who is
Hi.
a state representative and one of the Republican candidates for governor in the Illinois primary. And we have Scott Kennedy, who is the founder of the Illinois Election Data Service. He's also a Democratic consultant, but I'm so happy that you 2 could join me now, because what you really are here as political experts. And this is what people sometimes don't know, for those of us who cover politics. We speak a common language, which we're not going to tonight because we'll drive you crazy. You could do shorthand, you know, and you could talk about turnout and, you know, and you know, like, what about the collars? What about this and that? But I know both of you have probably had a little time to absorb what might have been happening so far today. So Scott, as the maven of numbers, what have you seen so far? What can you discern from the numbers that turn out?
Sure. From early voting, what we've seen is a record early voting turnout for a midterm. It's almost is the same level that we saw for the presidential. It's not quite there yet, we don't believe. So that leads us to believe that enthusiasm is strong, because we've seen long lines during early voting, we've seen long lines today. What's unclear about those numbers is if that represents voters who don't typically vote a midterm, or if it's just that our political energy is so charged, voters who normally wait a little longer are voting earlier.
Right, because I call that the cannibalization. People,
That's
you know,
right.
in this era where people don't even go out of their houses to shop, you know, you buy stuff online, the idea that you actually have to show up only one day to do something. So yes, I want to see too if you're just cannibalizing people who would come, which is the record turnout. Do you have a sense if these are new voters, if these are just people who vote in presidentials? When you look at where the surges are, what's your take on
Well,
this?
you know, I reside in DuPage County, and the anecdotal evidence is that basically there's been long lines for early voting since it started. You know, 2-hour lines were not uncommon. And even today, when I showed up to vote in person with my son, I pulled him out of school thinking he'd make it to second period. And, you know, we stood in line for over an hour, and the line was still continuing. So I think there's a big motivated voter out there this election. I think that's what's different.
I just want to point out something. You said you took your son. We just had Lieutenant
Yes.
Governor Evelyn Sanguinetti, who said she took her daughter. So for all this voting, I think it is just wonderful you're involved in public life. This doesn't have to do anything with your ideology or your politics. You want to imbue then on your child the importance of this civic exercise. Is that why you bring?
Sure. Well,
you wanna
he
show?
actually, it was great because he could vote for me in the primary, because we used that new law to our advantage, saying if you're going to be 18 by the general, you can vote in the primary even if you're 17. So he voted in the primary for his mother. That was kind of fun. And then he voted in the general. But I also was working a polling place outside of Park Ridge.
Yeah.
And there were a number of kids coming in on their lunch hour from the high school and voting as well. So I thought that was great.
Well, that is something we haven't seen. What do you think the youth vote might be?
You know, I think there was an anticipation a few weeks ago that it wouldn't be very high, but what we're seeing now, at least anecdotally, is that the youth vote may be turning out. So they weren't necessarily turning out early in the early voting process, but towards the end, we were seeing some pictures from some of the college campuses where at the student union, the lines were down the hall and down the stairs, 4 floors in Champaign, for example. So the participation is there. We'll see what it turns out to be.
But we've become a convenience society. So I think, you know, when you look at DuPage County, and I have the early vote and the vote by mail counts, and essentially it's almost 2 times from the midterms in 2014 that you have for, you know, vote by mail and early voting. So people they're taking advantage of this because it's available to them. So whether or not this translates into overall increased voting, I think it does. I actually do think that that makes a difference to have this tool available, but we'll see what the real results are.
So one of the things that's interesting, we had some numbers that just Chicago put out on it. And so let's look at just the age demographic. So out of the whole pie from voters 18 to 24, that's 18%. Voters 25 to 34, 28%. 34 to 44, 31. 45 to 54, the vote was 35. 55 to 64, it was 41%. 65 and up, 44% of those votes. So in all, they had 34.9% of all registered voters hit the poll before 1, but this list tends to skew older. So we're talking about the youth vote. It seems that the lowest number here was by far that 18 to 24.
Sure.
And
That's
this is what makes the senior vote so powerful, because they vote.
But
They vote out of
yes.
proportion to their numbers. Maybe that's why we heard so much about Social Security and Medicare from the.
So Lynn, I'd be interested in some analysis maybe that's done after the voting to see how these vote counts married up with the polling data. So are you excessively polling one demographic group over another, and compared to how they voted? So you know, you have a large range of people that when they're polled are kind of in that, you know, 30 to 60 age group, but maybe the 60 and over vote more than that percentage, but they're polled more. So I think the polling may be off this year, and it'll be interesting to find out.
So how are you going to analyze this data, even as it comes in and then as time comes? And again, so Scott has this vast historical reservoir of information on your website. What is your website?
It's IllinoisElectionData.com.
Okay. So.
Well, looking at Illinois races, I'm very interested to see the statewide races. You know, if you think back 4 years ago when Governor Rauner was successful, he won by 4 points, and he did very well downstate. He did very well in the collar counties. And so to see if he can replicate those numbers this time around, because he'll need to, with the addition of a third-party challenger or with 2 third-party challengers, that makes those totals more difficult. So we'll be closely looking at how this race shapes up compared to 4 years ago. And then you look at the Attorney General's race, which people think might be even closer than the governor's race. We'll start comparing the two and see where the difference is. And then you look at the General Assembly, and you've got I think it's almost a tale of 2 states. Up here in Chicago, the Democrats may have some gains, but those may be offset by gains by the Republicans in Southern Illinois, especially in the House.
We have quite a few competitive races, and we're even challenging in the suburbs in areas that had not seen a challenge before. Both Madigan's challenging conservatives in areas where he has not touched for years, but we're also challenging again and seeing some results. So we'll see what happens.
So that's kind of the flip side. Remember when we just had President and Party boss Preckwinkle here saying one of the reasons they went after, you know, the Republicans in county, it's all part of the art of politics. So you think those down ticket races, will they help Rauner and Erica Harold running for Attorney General?
Well, no, actually, when you're the top of the ticket's a little weak, it doesn't really help you down ballot. So you've got to, but you know, we've done. You know, I was on a teletown hall Sunday night basically to get out the vote for our down ballot races, because we need to, you know, actually flip the Illinois House so that we can save your house.
And right now the Illinois House,
Madigan's
wait, I'm looking at
agenda.
my cheat sheet. Right now it's Democrats control both chambers, and
That's correct.
Right. And I just move over a little bit because I have my numbers there.
Sorry.
Right now, Mike Madigan has a majority. It's 67 Democrats, 56 Republicans. If he gets
51.
71 tonight, then he will have a supermajority, and he could then do whatever he wants, no matter who is the governor, Pritzker or Rauner. And right now in the state Senate, you have 37 Democrats, 22 Republicans, including Sam McCain. They have 36 for supermajority.
You have a lot of open seats this cycle there.
Wow.
There was at least, I think, 36, people
And one
that
of
were
them
retiring.
is your seat.
Yes.
In the 42nd district, Jeannie had to give up her seat to run for governor, and that includes...
It's not my seat, it's the people's seat, but I hear what you're saying.
Well said. Well said. Thank you. You have Kathleen Carrier, a Democrat, running against Amy Grant, a Republican. We'll do a lot more of the handicapping later in the show, but since I have you here,
Sure.
what do you hear? What do you know about your district?
Amy's going to win that district. She'll win by double digits, and she's just a hard worker. She's a great campaigner. She's at the door. She's a sitting county board member, so her name is well known, and she just really, really works hard to meet the voter. And I think we know that that influences votes in the end to meet somebody at their door.
Has a Republican ever had the seat? Has a
The numbers change along.
Has a Democrat ever had
No,
the
not
seat?
really in the core of DuPage County in that center spot. Probably not. In fact, you can arguably say that Mike Madigan drew this seat to lump in more conservative or independent-minded folks. So it was drawn that way so that he could bite off the edges to make things more competitive for him in neighboring districts.
Well, when we talk about the state map, Scott, could you explain to people why you would think, well, Madigan, the Democrats drew the map after the 2010 census, and one of the reasons for wanting, the Democrats want all these governorships to go Democrat, and we'll know more tonight of some of the big races, especially in Florida and that big one in Georgia, go Democratic, is because it gives Democrats a hand in shaping the remap coming after the census. Now, Democrats have been complaining everywhere but in Illinois about your brother and sister Republicans having a heavy hand on the process here. But could you just decode for our viewers why Mike Madigan would want to pack all the Republicans in one district for the good, like put all the good Republicans in Lyle and Wheaton together?
Well, you know, when they redraw the districts in the state of Illinois, you're confined to the people that are in the state. It's not like you can draw in some people from Indiana and move some people into Wisconsin. So it's a zero-sum game, and sometimes what they'll try to do is just pack the opposing party, as many of their supporters, into as few districts as possible, so they're districts that the opposing party could win by large numbers. But then you've got thinner margins elsewhere, because then you're dealing with more of your own party. So that's generally the trick when you're trying to draw the map. It's limited in some instances by geographic density and where people are, right? So in the city of Chicago, where there are a ton of Democrats, you'll see a lot of those districts drawn to extend into the suburbs, like almost like a finger.
Very gerrymandered. I have a really important point on that, though. So the Wisconsin Democrats actually challenged the Wisconsin map, and that actually went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And actually, I was one of 15 Republicans who signed on to an amicus brief in support of that Democrat challenge for gerrymandered maps. And there were only 2 Democrats in the entire state that also signed on to that amicus brief. So it's kind of interesting. I think that a fair map is a fair map, and I'm willing to work under a computerized model to begin with, like Iowa starts with.
Well, we'll see on that. Now, we're going to have Jeannie and Scott back throughout the night. I just want to go through the two. We're looking at a number of key races tonight: governor, attorney general, and we have 2 big races up in the Chicago area for Congress in the 6th congressional district. That's Peter Roskam, who's running against Sean Casten, and in the 14th district, you have Democrat Lauren Underwood, who's running against Republican Rep. Randy Hultgren, and these are areas that are seen as battlegrounds. Do you have any predictions, insights, where you think first Jeannie and then Scott?
Sure. Randy Hultgren will win this race. I'm convinced of that. He won handily in 2016. The district has not shifted that much in terms of its Republican-Democrat mix. The DCC has obviously put in tons of money against Lauren Underwood. She's, just recently things have come to light about her, basically faking the fact that she's a practicing nurse, and also her, illegally voting in the 2016 primary. So there's things like that happening in that race that are going to shift it in Randy's favor here at the last minute. Peter Roskam, on the other hand, it's too close to call. And I live a mile from Peter. I know him very well. It's just, I know what's happening on the ground there.
So just a few hours ago, Donald Trump tweeted that Congressman Hultgren of Illinois is doing a great job. Get out there and vote for Randy. When Trump tweets this so late, what good does it do?
Well, look, Randy showed up, you know,
At the
down
rally.
in southern
Two
Illinois.
Saturdays
He was
ago
invited.
this
He was
weekend.
invited by the president to
Right.
show up there.
Peter
And
Roskam did not.
That's
go.
right. No, but you know, Randy Hultgren's district went for Trump.
Yeah.
So I think Randy's on solid footing. I think Peter is a hard campaigner, and I think some of the nonsense that's come out of the Caston campaign really bodes well for Peter. People see him as a serious person, concerned about taxes, and I think that in the end, Peter, who is known respectfully around the district,
That's
he'll
your
win.
prediction, your analysis.
Well, most of the national prognosticators have the Illinois 6 either a toss-up or leaning Democrat, and there was some talk earlier a few weeks ago that the national Republicans might cut off additional funding for Peter Roskam and his district. I think that was more of a scare tactic than anything, but it goes to show you the seriousness of that challenge. When you look at the neighboring district, Illinois 14, there was a poll done by the New York Times. They had done many polls of many battleground districts just over the weekend that had Hultgren down 6. Now, even I think that poll might be a bit of an outlier. I think everybody who watches those polls looked at that and were surprised by those numbers, but it's enough that it's gotten everybody's attention and everybody thinks, well, we've got at least one poll here showing that this is potentially a real race.
And again, we're going to see you later, but
Yes.
I realize I should ask you, what race do you think will be the nail-biter tonight?
That's a good one.
That we won't know.
Peter Roskam's race is going to be a nail biter tonight.
What do you
Yeah,
think?
I think that's probably the best choice.
Okay, I'm saying
Wow,
for...
that's great.
See, but that's it. Political professionals can agree on things like what races will be close. And the reason I'm glad you're here is that you could help us interpret results because you have your sources that will probably be able to know what votes are out. And that is going to be a gift to us because even if the numbers we have might show Roskam behind or Caston behind, you're going to know, well, gee, they haven't counted votes in Wheaton, Lynn, so let's
And the
not
battleground for
Yeah.
Roskam is in Wheaton and Glen Ellyn. That's already been pretty much outlined.
on it. So we'll see. So if he doesn't come out of Wheaton big, then then you're going to know there's a problem and we could do some analysis. Anyway, thank you. I'll see you later. We're going to shift gears now. We have about 9 minutes until the polls close in Illinois. You're looking at a shot of the Sun-Times newsroom live in the West Loop. What you see here on the screen really is a very big election night for us. It's Christmas, it's Rosh Hashanah, it's the big night here where everybody is focused. It's a solemn night for people who do the serious journalism that we do at the Sun-Times. And what you're looking at is what I call the main desk. An antiquated term is city desk, and these are the editors who are working with the reporters who are shaping the stories, reporting on it. There's a lot you do. You just don't sit around and wait for the polls to close. Reporters are working their sources. They're trying to get a handle on turnout. They're putting together background information. Because while I have the luxury here in the live stream of just telling you things as we know it, a print reporter has to actually make the call, figure out a lead, and turn it in on time so we could go print the paper. But anyway, the Illinois General Assembly has been a major issue in the races from the governor on down, and I bring you now, joining us now is our expert on the Illinois House and Senate, Marilyn Garcia. Marilyn, thank you so much for being here.
Lynn, thanks for
And
having
I
me.
want to say this, that she knows more than anyone about every state House and state Senate race, because Marilyn's a member of the Sun-Times editorial board, and it's been her job to talk to all the candidates with the other members of the board. But she has been a crucial part of putting together our voter guide, which, with 6 minutes left, if you still are undecided and you're standing in line, please look at. But you had put together so much credible information, voter questionnaires for the voters that the candidates put out. So I just want to do a little horse race here because we're beyond issues and we just want to be able to figure out who's going to win. Can you walk us through the big General Assembly races to see also Mike Madigan might get a supermajority? So do you want to do House or Senate first?
Let's go with the Senate.
Okay.
DuPage County has some really big races. Lynn, you're seeing a surge of women competing and challenging Republicans, Democratic women challenging Republicans in some big DuPage County races. If you look at the 21st District, which covers Naperville and Wheaton, the Republican there, the incumbent, Michael Connolly, he's being challenged by Laura Ellman. She's an engineer from Argonne National Laboratory. She's done a lot of volunteer work. She's worked on fair housing issues in Naperville. And this is one of the more expensive races in the state, and I think maybe the most expensive in the suburbs. I think between them they've spent well over $3 million.
Oh, that's huge. I mean, they've had, and that's part of it is because they're using TV commercials.
Exactly, especially in the last week. I'm sure viewers can understand what I'm talking about, what you're talking about when you talk about the onslaught of commercials, especially with the morning news, the evening news.
And it might lead to voter confusion. Now, some of these are on cable, so it's key to your geographic territory, but you're still seeing a blizzard of ads for candidates who may never see on your ballot. But anyway, continue. So that's the 21st. What is next?
If you go to the 24th, that's a very interesting race. Republican Chris Nybo being challenged by Susie Glowiak.
And he still had, I think I saw a Nybo TV ad still running today.
Exactly, and Glowiak's ads have been fast and furious in the last 2 weeks. But Chris Nybo is an interesting guy. He has been in the Senate for about 4 years. Before that was a state rep. He co-sponsored a gun dealer licensing bill aimed at curbing gun violence. That is not a very Republican thing to do. And he worked with a Democrat, Don Harmon of Oak Park. The residents of DuPage are saying, we fear mass shootings in our schools, in our churches. We want you to work on that. And Chris Nybo is one of those Republicans who's heard them and has tried to do some things.
So does he suffer in this district, or does he get credit? And we're talking about Lyle, Oak Brook, and Elmhurst. Those are pretty much Republican strongholds. Is this helping or hurting?
I would think that would help him, and that could help him with women. But Glowiak, she's
suburban swing women who
are
worried about children, guns in schools, and they don't care about party as much.
Exactly, but Glowiak is a former trustee for Western Springs. She was embraced by her community after her husband passed away. She's been an active member of her community, also an engineer. Really some sharp candidates here, and money. The Senate Democrats have contributed quite a bit to her campaign.
So that when we say Senate Democrats, we're talking about the political operation led by Senate President John Cullerton.
Yes.
Because both Illinois Speaker / Democratic Party Chair Mike Madigan and John Cullerton and their counterparts, Jim Durkin, the Illinois House leader, and I'm blanking, who is the Senate Republican leader? I'm blanking. That will come to me in a moment.
The Senate Republican
But anyway, the
leader.
point is they fund and fundraise to have lots of money available to help these targeted races that could help also determine if there's control. But anyway, let's go on with the other big race.
Right. Well, you know, the former Senate Republican leader, Christine Radonio, she stepped away after they negotiated a tax increase and the budget impasse was resolved. She stepped away. John Curran was appointed in her place. And it's interesting, so the Republicans have appointed men in the last couple of years for retiring members or members who've stepped away. And so I'm wondering if they could have a redo on that, if they would have appointed a few more women, because now these men are being challenged, right? And John Curran in the 41st District is being challenged by the Western Springs Village clerk, Bridget Fitzgerald. Really sharp. She emphasized to us that Christine Radonio is one of her one of the people she looks up to most in Illinois.
And by the way, I want to thank you to the woman in my ear, Carol Fowler, who is the impresario behind this live stream tonight. She reminded me that Bill Brady is the Senate Republican leader.
Who replaced
Carol.
Christine Radonio, right?
Yeah.
So this 41st District, there's a very big issue going on there, sterigenics. That's a key word in this race.
Yes.
That's the name of the medical equipment sterilization company in Willowbrook that emitted a cancer-causing chemical, into the atmosphere.
Huge. Yeah.
And John Curran has very little to do with that. I mean, he's only been in office since 2017, but we'll see if people hold him responsible for it. That said, Bridget Fitzgerald, I think she's endorsed by the Sierra Club. She's an environmental candidate. And we'll see how that issue plays out.
So actually, that sterigenics has been playing a role in the 6th District congressional race, hasn't it?
It's played, it's a lot of races in DuPage County because so many towns have been affected.
On it. So we have 1 minute until the polls close. in our time zone, which means that we are soon going to know more about whether or not the House Democrats will reclaim the House. We may nationally know a few more governorships. It'll be interesting to see how soon J.B. Pritzker will be able to declare victory. If everybody's prediction is right, that should be one of the early ones that we have. So we have 13 seconds right now until the polls close in Illinois, but we're going to finish up with our House races in a minute, but I just want to do the countdown. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, the polls are closed in Illinois, so we'll hopefully get some results soon. So joining me now will be on the set, I think Marilyn, you stay, and we're going to be joined by Professor Chris Mooney from the University of Illinois at Chicago. Oh, no, stay with us a little bit because I just want to finish the House races.
Oh, that's terrific. I'll stay.
On that, just to give the overview, and if we get some results early on, we will be happy to give it to you on it. We know that nationally that key race in Florida is a little too early to call. The things for those of you that are trying to look at the big national races as well, the big governorship in Florida, the Senate Florida race, that governor race in Georgia on it. But anyway, welcome back to the show, Professor. Thank you for being here. Do you have any sense, since we're talking about the state rep race on it, do you have any sense or handicap you think if Mike Madigan could be able to get a supermajority this time around?
Yeah, I don't like to bet on these things. I gave that up a couple of years ago, and I was mistaken on a particular election that my wife keeps reminding me about. But on this one, I'd say the odds are pretty good. I think the Republicans are playing defense by and large. All the competitive seats all but 2 are being basically held by Republican right now. So the Democrats are, by my count, competitive in 14, only 2 of which are Democrats. So they have a possibility. I mean, they could potentially pick up 12. I don't think they're going to pick up that many. But they don't need to pick up that many to get a supermajority. And then again, the supermajority is just a sort of an artificial number. It doesn't mean that much, but what it does indicate is, number one, the skill with which these districts were carved up in 2012, and the dominance of the Democratic Party in the state.
So why don't you go through now, walk us through the Illinois House races, and if we get some results, of course, we'll put them up on the screen so you can see what is going on, but give us at least a few minutes for people to start counting on this. So walk us through, because we got a bunch of them, and if we get some results or if there's some other breaking news, we'll jump in, but start us on this long slog through Mike Madigan's world here.
Sure. Well, let me start by mentioning the 54th House District. That's northwest suburban, Palatine, Inverness. The incumbent there, Republican Tom Morrison, he's being challenged by a Democrat, Maggie Trevor. Now, Tom Morrison is very, very conservative. He sponsored a bathroom bill that's a transgender issue right there, a bathroom bill that went nowhere a few years ago. He offered public support to a convicted child abuser that he once worked with, a gentleman that's out in Arizona. He retracted that support, but I'm wondering if it could haunt him. I'm wondering if that bathroom bill is going to haunt him. Add to that Maggie Trevor is an excellent candidate and is terrific on policy. We'll see how forgiving the voters are out in the Palatine area. Another terrific race, because I think it's going to be very close, is out in the 48th district, back in DuPage County. Republican Peter Breen. He's going up against Tara Costa Howard, the Democrat. This is an area where the Democrats are energized. Women, I think, are energized in this area. Breen is known to be very conservative. Tara Costa Howard supports a woman's right to choose to have an abortion. We'll see how the voters feel, because that's a big issue between those two candidates.
Yeah, both of these particular races, I think, are very parallel in the sense that you get a strong, right-wing Republican candidate, somebody who's on the fringe-ish, not exactly the fringe of their party, but they're over there. I think one would, along